I, male 45, have been married to my wife Amy, 45 years old, for the past 15 years. I work as an executive at a company, while my wife is a homemaker. She used to work at a plant nursery in her 20s, but after we got married, she chose to be a homemaker. We have 2 daughters, Emma, 13 years old, and Ella, 11 years old. Our family was happy until the truth about my wife's cheating came to light, thanks to our smart TV. So, last week, it was our friend John's birthday. He has been living in a different country for the past few years. We decided to video call him at midnight to wish him a happy birthday. After the wishes, the 4 of us, my wife, John, his wife, and I, engaged in some casual conversations about work and life. Since John didn't have other plans for his birthday night, we decided to hang out virtually and relax for a while. His wife suggested we Chromecast the WhatsApp video call through the TV so we could all sit back, unwind, and enjoy our time together. Amy and John's wife are good friends, and we used to spend a lot of time together when they lived in the same city. Amy connected her phone to the TV since the TV remote app was already installed and active on her phone. We grabbed some beers and snacks and had a good time during the virtual celebration. After a while, Amy began to feel dizzy and ended up dozing off on the couch while John and I continued our conversation. His wife had also fallen asleep. Around 15 to 20 minutes into our call, it disconnected due to internet issues, and my wife's WhatsApp screen appeared on the TV. I was just about to call John back when I noticed over 10 unread messages from someone named Lifeline with a heart symbol. This was unexpected because I wasn't the one communicating with this person. My curiosity got the best of me, so I clicked on the profile picture and discovered it was her childhood friend, Matt. I've met him countless times since we got married because my wife was close to him. They were neighbors and school friends, and there were rumors that they might date each other. However, that never happened. According to my wife, she didn't see Matt as a romantic partner, and besides, Matt was not interested in women. As of now, Matt was single. I wasn't too concerned about my wife's connection with her Lifeline because she had assured me that he wasn't into women. However, just then another message appeared in their chat. "Baby, I miss you." This raised some concerns, prompting me to look into the situation. I hesitantly opened the chat with Matt. It became clear that my wife had been chatting with him all along through her phone while we were on the video call. Unfortunately for Matt, my wife unexpectedly fell asleep without giving him a goodnight kiss, which explained why he was flooding her WhatsApp with messages. After he saw the blue check marks on his messages, he expressed things like, "Why aren't you replying? Is everything okay? I can't sleep without your goodnight kiss. And I can't stop thinking about today's session. OMG, you were so good today." This couldn't possibly be a conversation between close friends. At that moment, I was absolutely certain that their relationship went far beyond mere friendship. I scrolled up in their chat history and discovered that they engaged in graphic messaging almost every night. The chats had occasional flashes of X-rated photos and videos in between, which gave shivers down my spine. I felt numb, yet an insatiable curiosity drove me to find out everything that had transpired between them. While my wife peacefully slept on the couch, I sifted through the graphic content she had shared with her secret lover. The chats occasionally included detailed photos and videos, which only added to my distress. I was emotionally overwhelmed, but I couldn't resist delving into the details. I wasn't sure how to capture screenshots from the TV, so I used my phone to take pictures of the screen. After snapping 5 pictures, I decided I had seen enough evidence. My primary desire was to understand how and why this had happened. I wanted to vent my frustration, but I was at a loss on how to confront her. It was 2 a.m., and I had consumed numerous beers along with a few shots of scotch, leaving me with little energy to do anything but scroll through their conversation. My failed marriage was laid out before me on the large TV screen, and everything felt devoid of meaning. She had shared even the most private details of our moments together with her lover. In fact, after each private moment between us, she would repeat the same with him, as if trying to make up for his feelings. I was utterly repulsed by this discovery. I wanted to pinpoint when all of this had started, so I continued scrolling. But it seemed like an endless abyss, growing deeper with every scroll. By that time, Matt's messages had ceased, and an eerie silence enveloped the house. I felt like I was in a haunting nightmare. To reassure myself that I wasn't dreaming or hallucinating, I grabbed a nearby cushion. I was still scrolling aimlessly when Amy suddenly woke up from her nap. Her drowsy state transformed into sheer panic as she witnessed her dual life unraveling on the TV screen. She hastily snatched the remote from my hand and turned off the TV, then disconnected her phone from it. I just stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. I watched as she opened her WhatsApp chat, skimmed through her lover's messages, and then closed the app with a heavy sigh. That sigh signaled her surrender. She realized that I knew everything. She gently held my face in her hands and drew closer, pleading, "Baby, I can explain. Please, listen to me." I gazed back at her and responded, "All right, go ahead and explain." Her surprise was evident. She had expected me to react with anger and refuse to listen. If it were 2:30 p.m. instead of 2:30 a.m., I might have reacted the same way. I was on the verge of passing out, partly due to the alcohol and mostly due to the shocking truth unfolding before me. I reiterated, "Explain, damn it." She struggled to find the right words and stammered, "Well, actually..." You know what? Don't bother," I interrupted. "You know you're in trouble." With that, I stumbled my way to the bedroom and she followed. I turned to her and while slamming the door in her face, told her to stay out. I heard her knocking a few times, but I soon drifted off into unconsciousness. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head and a fuzzy memory of the previous night. I left my room to grab a bottle of water because my throat was parched. As I emerged from my room, she hurried toward me, and all the distressing memories of the previous night flooded back. She attempted to hug me, but I asked her to step back. She withdrew with teary eyes and a forlorn expression. She insisted that I had misunderstood everything. I ignored her and walked over to the refrigerator to get a water bottle. She continued to pester me, claiming I was overreacting, that he was just a friend, they hadn't had a physical relationship, and it was all innocent flirting. I wasn't prepared for a confrontation, but her feeble excuses only fueled my agitation, and I raised my voice. "Seriously? Who in the world sends explicit photos to their male friends? And what's the deal with all that sexting? Wasn't he supposed to have no interest in women? How did he suddenly become interested in your private parts?" It was a Saturday morning, and thankfully my children weren't at home. They were spending their summer vacation with my parents that week. I fixed my gaze on her, silently demanding an explanation. My mental state was in shambles. I wanted to uncover the truth, even though I knew it would devastate me. I yearned for her to confess every detail of her wrongdoing, yet every time she opened her mouth, I felt nauseous. I clenched my teeth, urging her to speak, only to silence her when she did. I don't know what I was doing. I recognized that I acted irrationally, but how else would someone react upon discovering that they'd been deceived for 15 years and their entire marriage was a lie? I guzzled down an entire bottle of water in one go and then demanded that she confess everything from the beginning, or I would confront that two-faced lover of hers and give him a serious beating. This time, instead of concealing or pleading, she decided to reveal the truth. She admitted that she and Matt had always been lovers. They initiated a physical relationship in high school and had continued it ever since. However, Matt was an idle individual who forthrightly told Amy that he couldn't financially support her. To provide some context about Matt, he's a high school dropout who has never earned a single penny on his own. His parents owned several properties in the suburbs, and the rental income from these properties barely covered his expenses. I had met his parents a couple of times during my visits to Amy's house. They were worried about Matt's laziness and urged Amy to advise him on finding a job or starting a business. Everyone, except Matt, was concerned about his future. Anyway, getting back to the point, Amy admitted that she had severed ties with Matt several times due to his commitment issues, but he always managed to win her back. Surprisingly, Matt had no qualms about Amy dating other men, even though he had never dated anyone else but her. She had a couple of boyfriends before we started dating, so this seemed plausible to me, albeit unusual. What kind of lover does that? Lazy, maybe. I asked her why she hadn't married him if they were so close. She explained that Matt wouldn't have been able to provide a good lifestyle for her. Additionally, Amy herself never had a stable job and didn't have career ambitions that would allow her to be the primary breadwinner. So she chose to be financially dependent and lead a double life. I had one final question. Were the children mine or Matt's? She swore that they were mine, but I remained skeptical and continued to doubt her. She offered to arrange a DNA test if I wasn't convinced. She explained that she couldn't risk having children with Matt because she was afraid that if her secret came to light, and I abandoned the children, Matt wouldn't be able to raise them, even if he wanted to. I wasn't sure whether to feel relieved that at least the children were mine. I told her to leave the house or else I would expose her truth to everyone, including the girls. They might be young, but they were smart enough to understand the situation. She pleaded with me not to tell our daughters, fearing they would hate and disrespect her. I refilled the water bottle, grabbed a few beer bottles, and retreated to my room, locking the door. I sat in front of my laptop staring at the screen for over an hour. I didn't know what to do next, or who to talk to. The truth was eating me up from the inside, making me feel suffocated. After finishing off the beer bottles, I left my room, grabbed my car keys, and drove to my in-laws' place, which was about a 30-minute drive away. My mother-in-law answered the door with a friendly smile, but as soon as she saw my red face, she sensed something was amiss. She called my father-in-law, who rushed out from their bedroom and sat me down. I was sweating and anxious, my heart racing. I explained to them that I didn't know a better way to confront the situation, and then I began narrating everything. My throat grew dry and my body temperature skyrocketed as I divulged the ugly truth. Midway through, we heard someone banging on the door. It was Amy. She stormed into the house and demanded that I leave immediately. She insisted that this was a private matter and that we should deal with it ourselves without involving her parents. The next few hours were a tumultuous mix of emotions. I chastised her for cheating on me for 15 years, while she brushed it off as a casual relationship that meant nothing to her. Gradually, she shifted the blame onto me for turning her parents against her, and I defended myself. My in-laws sided with me and scolded her. I spent the entire weekend drinking, occasionally passing out and refilling my stomach with alcohol. When Monday came around, I went to work feeling groggy and drained. At the office, I searched for divorce lawyers online and scheduled an appointment with one. When I returned home, I noticed that some of her belongings were missing. I assumed she had come while I was away, packed some of her things, and left. I didn't bother to check on her. She messaged me, informing me that she would be staying at a hotel to give me some time to cool off. Really? Did she believe this matter was so insignificant that I could just easily move past it? She also bombarded me with messages, begging for forgiveness and making promises to end her relationship with her lover. It's been a painstakingly long week since that fateful day, and now it's Friday again. The days have been crawling by, and I anticipate the weekend will drag on even more. I have an appointment with the lawyer scheduled for this upcoming Monday. I've been scouring Reddit stories in search of a solution to my predicament, but it seems like my situation is quite complex. More than worrying about myself, I'm concerned about my daughters. How should I handle them? Should I even address the issue with them at all? Update. I'm sorry for not keeping you all in the loop, but I did connect with some of you through private messages and comments. It's been 6 months since my initial post, and let me tell you, it's been quite a roller coaster ride. I met with the lawyer on that Monday and discussed my concerns regarding my daughters. The attorney advised me to approach the kids gently about the separation, avoiding too many details as it might harm their mental well-being. He also mentioned that considering my wife's unemployment and the nature of her affair, I have a good chance of obtaining custody. On the same day, my parents reached out to Amy to bring the kids home from their place. They were still unaware of the situation. She arrived with the children while I was drained and lying on the couch after the stressful meeting with the lawyer. I refrained from discussing anything in front of the children and confined myself to my room. When she entered the bedroom, I urged her to have a conversation with the girls about her infidelity. She burst into tears and begged for my forgiveness, repeatedly expressing her fear that the girls would despise her. Well, she should expect nothing less. After cheating on your family for 15 years, what else could she anticipate? The lawyer mentioned that it would take about a week to send the divorce papers to Amy, so I had a week to sort things out with the children and my parents. I informed her of my decision to divorce her, and her reaction seemed as though it had come out of nowhere. She voiced concerns about the potential trauma to the children due to the divorce, which left me wondering where her maternal instincts had been hiding all these years. I firmly reiterated my decision and gave her a 1-week ultimatum to talk to the girls in her own way, or else I would be the one to reveal the truth. With my pillows in tow, I crashed on the bedroom couch and drifted off to sleep. Throughout that entire week, I left the house early in the morning and returned late in the evening. As the weekend drew near, she would often cry and wail through the night, sometimes so intensely that it would wake me up. I did feel sorry for her, but how could she carry on like this for so many years? What was she thinking? believing she would never be discovered. She had multiple opportunities to end her affair, yet she persisted. Our private conversations, my vulnerabilities, my deepest secrets, everything, she left exposed to her lover. How could I forget all of that? On Friday evening, she informed me that she had devised a plan to talk to the girls the following day. I nodded in agreement. On Saturday after breakfast, she gathered the children and mentioned that we had some news to share. She explained that I had received a job transfer to a different country, and as a result, I would be moving away for a few years. I was taken aback, and my daughters looked at me in surprise. In front of the girls, I sarcastically asked her, "So, this means I have to move out of the house, right?" She rolled her eyes and signaled me to be quiet. She continued, "Well, if that's the case and the house feels too big for the three of us, we can move to my parents' house for now, and later we can find a smaller place." The girls were clearly confused by this explanation. They were young, but not naive enough to miss the game she was trying to play. My younger daughter told Amy that what she was saying didn't make sense, while the older one directly questioned us. "Are you guys getting divorced?" I shot a stern look at Amy and urged her to tell the truth. With a sigh, she broke down. The girls turned to me for answers, and I told them they were correct about our divorce. I explained that we no longer felt compatible with each other. My elder daughter even suggested that I might be having an affair, which was why Amy was crying. She held her mother's hand and asked Amy if I was cheating on her. Instead of clearing the air, Amy simply hugged her, leaving the girls disgusted with us both. I was furious with that manipulative woman. I couldn't believe how she had turned the situation against me. I ended up telling my daughters everything, explaining how I found out, but of course, I left out the graphic details. Amy shouted at me, accusing me of reneging on my word. She argued that I had given her the freedom to explain things to the girls, so why wasn't I supporting her when she talked about my job transfer? The situation had spiraled out of control, and I decided it was time to stand up to Amy's manipulation. I called both my parents and my in-laws and asked them to come over as soon as possible. They all lived within a 25-30-minute drive, and within an hour, they were at my house. That 1 hour felt like a never-ending nightmare that I'll never forget. My daughters were crying, clinging to me, and witnessing this, Amy did her best to justify her actions. She went as far as painting me as a liar and accused me of manipulating the girls against her. Her arguments ceased only when I mentioned I had photos of those conversations. My parents were shocked by the scene before them. I gave them a brief account of the situation. Everyone was repulsed by Amy's reprehensible actions. She continued sobbing and pleaded for forgiveness. I felt a moment of pity for her. It was painful to see her in this state, but she had brought it upon herself. Instead of casting me as the villain in front of my daughters, she could have simply told them that we had fallen out of love or something similar. But she wasn't willing to accept even the slightest blame, and now her ugly truth was exposed to everyone, including our daughters. I made it clear that we were moving forward with the divorce, and the girls would be staying with me. I asked her parents to take her away. Even the girls themselves asked her to leave. My parents decided to stay with us for a few weeks to offer support and help us through this tough time. It was undoubtedly a challenging period, but I'm relieved that we emerged from it stronger. I've started therapy for all three of us, and we're all in a much better mental state now. My divorce proceedings are ongoing. Amy has made a claim on my house, which I'm contesting because I don't believe she deserves any part of it. Interestingly, she didn't contest the custody of the children, which makes her priorities quite clear and simplifies things for us. During our confrontation and even afterward, Amy promised to sever all ties with her lover. However, after moving in with her parents, she was caught visiting her lover's house. Her siblings discovered this and humiliated her to the point where she had to leave the house. Her parents also confronted Matt for his actions and informed his parents about the situation. As far as I know, Matt's parents have stopped providing him with rental income from their properties and urged him to support himself. Meanwhile, Amy is working as a sales agent in a showroom. I no longer dwell on thoughts of her. My focus is on raising my daughters and providing them with the best life I can. Wish me luck. Story 2. My wife, who is 31, and I, who am 32, have always shared a loving relationship. We were high school sweethearts and decided to get married when she became pregnant. The pregnancy was the reason we tied the knot. From the beginning, we've had an active and enjoyable bed life. Throughout the years, we've been very happy together, and there hasn't been any reason to think otherwise. However, raising our son has been quite challenging since he's always been prone to illness. Doctors initially suspected anemia, which made his health struggles more complicated. As he reached the age of 13, these issues became more frequent. He would often experience severe trapped gas, causing him to hunch over in pain and feel immobilized. Fatigue plagued him, no matter how much he slept. He also suffered from constant lightheadedness and occasional dizzy spells that seemed to appear out of nowhere. These health concerns were frustrating because they were unpredictable, and we struggled to identify their root cause. I empathized deeply with my son's suffering, especially because no one in my family had experienced such an illness. We never conducted a genetic test to determine the source, assuming it might be related to my wife's side of the family. The doctors consistently found him to be anemic through various tests, which could either be a genetic or acquired condition, leaving us uncertain about its origin, despite his efforts to increase his iron intake. Our family went through a lot due to our son's health issues, and it became our new normal. Fortunately, we decided to consult a different doctor, who eventually diagnosed him with celiac disease. Eliminating gluten from his diet made a significant difference, and he started feeling like a normal person again. Celiac disease is hereditary and tends to run in families. Interestingly, both my wife and I were relieved because, for once, we had the ability to control his flare-ups. We no longer had to arrange our lives around hospital visits or be ready to rush him to the emergency room at any time. It was a sense of relief we hadn't experienced in 13 years. Little did we know that this would mark the beginning of the unraveling of our marriage. Discovering the root cause of our son's inherited illness would shatter our family and expose a 14-year-old secret only my wife could explain. The doctor suggested that my wife and I undergo a blood test to determine which side of the family the disease originated from. We took the blood test and the results came back negative. This meant that celiac disease antibodies weren't present in our blood. We repeated the test and the outcome remained the same. During our next visit, the doctor was perplexed and even questioned if our son might be adopted. We assured him that this wasn't the case, but the situation was awkward, and I noticed my wife's discomfort. On the drive back from the doctor's office, I remained unusually quiet, my thoughts drifting back to the time when our son was conceived. I remember making a humorous suggestion about getting a paternity test back then because I was still using protection. Her response was a simple, "Don't be silly," which was the expected reply. She could have reacted differently, but her nonchalant response was all it took to brush it aside. I had only been joking, and now, more than ever, I regretted making that comment. She knew I wasn't serious. It was frustrating. Despite having doubts, I couldn't bring myself to confront her about it. It seemed unimaginable. I had raised him since birth, and he meant the world to me. He was my legacy. The sleepless nights, the pain, the deception. It was all beyond anything I could have imagined. The idea that he might not be my biological son was inconceivable. I was even afraid to go for a DNA test because of what it might reveal. Eventually, I gathered the courage to order a test kit online and sent it in. When the results came back, my world fell apart. I didn't know how to process this. We had gone through college together with hardly any issues. I believed we had a happy life together, sharing similar work schedules. And I had never suspected anything was going on behind my back. But now, it was clear that this child was not my biological son. When she returned home that day, she found me sprawled on the floor with a half-empty bottle of scotch. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't even realize she had come in until she tried to rouse me. I confronted her, demanding to know who the real father of the child was. She stepped back, appearing confused, then responded with anger, insisting that I was the father. I accused her of lying, asserting that she had been deceiving me for 13 years. I disclosed that I had taken a DNA test, which had revealed that he wasn't biologically mine. She asked to see the DNA test, but I refused, urging her to answer the question directly. Instead of addressing the paternity issue, she attempted to deflect blame by bringing up the fact that I had sought a paternity test. She made it seem as though my choice to get a paternity test was worse than her affair with another man and bringing home a baby 13 years ago, all while lying to me and allowing me to raise him as my own. She tried to shift the blame onto me, as if it were my fault for seeking a DNA test. I told her that she was the reason our son had suffered for 13 years. She knew why, and she must have. Yet she allowed him to endure it and let me bear the burden, all to protect her secret. She made every effort to dodge responsibility and shift blame. But I eventually warned her that if she didn't reveal the true identity of the child's father, I would contact every man she had interacted with over the past 13 years and request a DNA test from them. My eye had turned bloodshot, signaling my intense seriousness. And finally, she broke down. She confessed that our son belongs to a co-worker from her previous job. She revealed that she had fallen for this guy over the course of a month. They had been close a few times, and then it stopped because of her deep love for me, and during that whole month, I had not the slightest inkling of what was happening, as I continued to live my happy life. Now, I find it incredibly hard to trust her. It's difficult for me to even look her in the eyes. I used to believe that we had everything we wanted, even making plans to have a child together, when this revelation came crashing in. We were genuinely happy, or so I thought, until he entered our lives. Before, I was content. I thought our marriage was solid, but now it feels like it was all a facade. We have a beautiful home, nice cars, a comfortable life without financial concerns, but I've lost what truly mattered. She claims it only happened once, a moment of adventurous desire, a desire for something out of the ordinary, but I struggle to believe her. It's more than just being cheated on. It feels like my entire life has been a falsehood. She's not the person I once knew, he's not my biological son, and ultimately, I find myself alone, without any true offspring of my own. The tears couldn't be contained. I couldn't bear to stay in our home any longer. I reached out to my boss at work, confessing everything and expressing my need for an extended leave. He grew concerned about my mental state and insisted on driving over to my house to ensure I was okay. I wasn't particularly close to my boss, but he made the effort to drive over to my house and took me out to a restaurant that evening, giving me a chance to step away from home. During our conversation, he shared a poignant story about a friend of his who had discovered his child wasn't biologically his, and subsequently took his own life. He expressed a strong desire to provide me with all the support I needed. My boss encouraged me to take an extended break from work, urging me to pursue something I've always longed for but couldn't due to my responsibilities. One of my long-standing dreams has been to travel. I've never ventured beyond the borders of my country, aside from a trip to Mexico, as I've always been dedicated to providing for my family, especially in case of emergencies concerning my son. This dedication to our family is the reason we haven't traveled much. I've always harbored a desire to explore developing countries, places that are both safe and different enough to provide a true cultural experience. When my boss brought up this idea, it unexpectedly brought some happiness into my life. It served as a welcome distraction, a new adventure. My wife and I have always dreamed of visiting destinations like Kenya, Namibia, and Thailand. My wife accused me of running away from our problems, but I explained that I needed some space to think. The situation has taken a toll on me, and I can't look at our son the same way. It's important to clarify that it's not his fault. I've cherished that little troublemaker since before he was born. However, my current feelings are different. I can't help but view him as someone I've raised, yet he's not truly my son. This connection has been shaken to its core. With everything that's happened, I needed a break. So I applied for a tourist visa to Kenya, and surprisingly, I got it within just 24 hours. It gave me something to look forward to, and I'd recommend to anyone going through a tough time to travel somewhere with a different culture. It's a perfect way to temporarily shift your focus. I knew it wasn't the ideal time to visit Kenya, but the distraction was exactly what I needed for my mental well-being. For a few hours, I could escape from thoughts of my son and wife, and simply be in the moment, surrounded by the locals and nature. I had a blast. I went snorkeling, enjoyed boat rides, and experienced the genuine warmth in the eyes of people I'd never met before. It was precisely what I required during that period. After spending a week in Mombasa, I decided to return home to sort things out. I had made up my mind to get a divorce from my wife. Upon my return, I felt like going back to where I'd just come from because home didn't feel like home with her around. I couldn't look at her, couldn't stand the sound of her voice, and I had even started distancing myself from my son, which made me feel absolutely miserable. My son is a bright kid and he already senses that something is wrong, but I can't help it. I want to make it clear that I will never abandon my son under any circumstances. I feel disconnected from him, but I attribute it to the shock of recent news. Nevertheless, it needs to change, and I'm well aware of that. As for my marriage, my wife suggested we seek marriage counseling, claiming that her affair happened a long time ago, and she's been faithful since then. But how can I be sure she hasn't cheated on me again? I used protection when I was with her, while she was having unprotected sex with a former co-worker. She knew 13 years ago that the child isn't mine, but chose to lie for all those years. How can I trust anything she says? That's why I asked for an amicable divorce to give myself a chance to heal. I suggested we share custody of my son, and I would still be his legal father because I still care about him deeply. None of this is his fault, and I want what's best for him. At this point, my wife agrees with everything. However, I'm worried that my feelings toward my son might change over time, and that terrifies me. I've also told my soon-to-be ex-wife that she needs to reach out to the biological father and inform him. It's better for everything to come out in the open now. She initially wanted me to keep this secret from the biological dad, as well as from our family and friends. I agreed for the time being, but once the divorce is finalized, I'll contact the biological dad, and I'll have to break the news to my parents, which won't be easy for them to accept. I'm still young, and I believe I can start a new family, which might be the best way to move past this betrayal. Currently, I've already initiated the divorce proceedings, and it should be finalized within the next 5 months. In the meantime, I'm actively looking for an apartment, and I intend to leave the house to my soon-to-be ex-wife and my son. This story starts with me and my wife being happily married. We have 2 wonderful daughters, aged 13 and 10, and we had what I believed was a pretty healthy relationship. However, at some point, things started to feel strange. She became overly attached to her phone, deleting the saved passwords on our shared computer, and abruptly ending phone calls when I entered the house or the room. You can probably guess what it looked like. With 15 years of marriage behind us, I hoped it wasn't what it seemed to be so obviously. One day when my wife told me she was going to spend time with the girls, I decided to follow her. As expected, I found her driving to a hotel to meet with someone I'll call Peter. It was more than just a gut punch. I cried for a whole hour without stopping. Once I was done wallowing in self-pity, I thought about getting even. Various scenarios involving me aggressively confronting Peter crossed my mind. However, I eventually opted for a more civil and legal approach, but just barely. So, the first step of my plan was to gather evidence. Instead of hiring a private investigator, I came up with a better idea. While my wife was at work and the kids were at school, I installed some small hidden cameras and microphones that I had purchased. I even managed to set one up perfectly overlooking our bed due to our bedroom setup. However, I made sure not to use them while I was at home. After a few days, I suggested to my wife that the weekend after next, I should take the girls on a trip to a place I won't disclose, and we could spend a night there too. It's worth mentioning that due to her demanding and often exhausting job, and our different interests and talents, I had always been the main caregiver. I took on the role of cooking and played a more active part in raising the girls, showing them a lot of patience and attention without spoiling them. So, it wasn't unusual for me to take the girls on a trip alone. This detail will become important later in the story. Over the next 2 weeks, I got everything in order and contacted a lawyer to create a separation agreement that would grant me residence and custody. Finally, I went on the trip, trying not to reveal anything to the girls, and waited to see if Peter and my wife would fall into the trap. When I came back, I reviewed the recordings from the weekend, and indeed, it was a 36-hour closeness fest. When they weren't ducking, their conversation was even more intriguing. I learned that Peter had a wife, but I'll share more about her later. But what was even worse was that they discussed me in their conversations. In addition to the expected comments about my physical attributes and how I failed to satisfy her, there were some really hurtful remarks. For instance, she shared some of my deepest secrets and shameful stories with Peter, things I had only confided in her, just so they could mock and laugh at me. By this time, I was certain about what I needed to do. The following day, before the kids left but before my wife also left, I confronted her with the video evidence and gave her an ultimatum. Either she signs the separation agreement and leaves the house, or the girls will receive a detailed explanation of all the cheating details. I want to make it clear that I had no intention of actually following through with the threat. I love my daughters too much to put them through that. However, I did use the bluff to put pressure on her, and she was too emotional to see through it. She went through all the stages: denial, attempts to negotiate, threats, and anger. I allowed her to go through all of it. Eventually, she signed the separation agreement, and that same evening, she left after saying her goodbyes to the girls. I didn't show or tell the girls any explicit details. I've always been honest with them, and that's why I was their favorite parent. So I simply told them that mommy had been unfaithful. It took some time for the younger one to understand, but my older daughter got really upset. She had just gotten her first boyfriend, though it's not a clear term at that age, but she was mature enough to be furious. This could be important in a potential custody battle, as she agreed to give up custody for now, but I feared, and I was right, that she might try to fight me for the kids. What I didn't expect was for her to use her visitation rights to badmouth me. Basically, she started telling my younger daughter that it was all my fault for not forgiving her. Her lawyer even began demanding that she should get custody, though she couldn't receive money or the house due to being caught cheating, which matters a lot in divorce proceedings in my state. So, I finally put my revenge plan into action. I decided to take a trip to South Carolina. Why South Carolina? Because I really wanted my daughters to see Fort Sumter. I definitely didn't go there because it's one of the last places where Revenge X movies isn't illegal, and where I could upload my wife and Peter's escapades on a famous X website and other similar sites without facing prosecution, as it wasn't illegal when and where the acts took place. I sent the links to my wife's employer, her clients, and everyone in her line of work just to be sure. I also sent the links to Peter's wife and his firm. Peter soon went through a divorce. I feel sorry for his wife as she was an innocent victim in all of this, but I think it's better that she found out. As for my wife, this was the end of any chance to get custody. She soon got fired from her job of 8 years. While the Revenge X video part was a mean move, it couldn't be prosecuted in South Carolina, so it only reflected negatively on my personality in court. However, my wife's unemployment, being blacklisted in her profession due to being on an X website, and the girls, especially my older daughter influencing the younger, stating they wanted to stay with me, made it clear who would get custody. Since she was unemployed, I received no alimony, but I make enough money to support both me and the girls, and I can handle a full-time job while caring for them, as they are old enough to allow me to do so. Several months later, my wife is still unemployed, though I'm not sure if it's because of her movie or the virus situation. The girls are growing up just fine, and they don't seem to mind not seeing their mother. The last time I communicated with my ex-wife was on Facebook, where she told me how I ruined her life and her relationship with her daughters, but honestly, I think she earned it. I'm a 40-year-old woman, and my husband is 42. We got married when I was 22, and he was 23. So far, our marriage has been great. We have a 12-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son together. However, recently, I've been having a strange feeling that my husband might be in love with my sister. Just to provide some background, my sister, who is 43, has always disliked me. Even though she was our parents' favorite while we were growing up, she held this hatred towards me and always took away things I loved. For example, when I was younger, I enjoyed playing soccer and was good at it. When my sister found out, she also started playing soccer, but she wasn't better than me, not to brag. One day my sister injured her ankles, and somehow she blamed me for it. She told our parents, who believed her because she was their favorite. As a result, they banned me from playing soccer ever again, even though it wasn't my fault. Additionally, she took my first boyfriend and bullied me at school, but I didn't speak up and mostly kept to myself. Now, recently I had this feeling that my husband might be in love with my sister. When she got divorced, she immediately called my husband, and he went to her without any hesitation. It's always been like this. Whenever she needs him, he's there for her without a second thought. About 2 months ago, our 12-year-old daughter broke her arm, and both my husband and I went to the hospital with her while our son was at his friend's place. When we got back home, my daughter asked if she could have McDonald's, so I went out to get it for her since she really wanted it. She also wanted her dad to stay with her, as she's always been close to him. When I returned home with the food, I saw my husband leaving with our daughter crying and pleading for him to stay. I rushed over to find out what was going on, and he told me he was going to my sister's because she wasn't feeling well. I was upset and asked why he was going there when our daughter had just broken her arm. He only replied that his sister needed him and left. This made me extremely angry, so I packed bags for myself, my daughter, and my son, and we went to stay at my aunt's place. She was the only family member who agreed that my sister was difficult, so I spent much of my childhood with her. 2 days later, I had to return home because I forgot my work computer. When I got there, I was shocked by what I saw. My husband and my sister were on the couch in our family home, engaged in something they shouldn't have been doing. As soon as they saw me, they hurriedly dressed up, and my husband rushed towards me, insisting that it wasn't what it appeared to be, and that it was all a big misunderstanding. I yelled back at him, asking how he could betray me like this, and if I didn't matter to him, and I yelled that I wanted a divorce, and then I left. After reaching my aunt's place, I went straight to the room where I was staying and couldn't hold back my tears. I feel lost and don't know what to do next. Despite asking my aunt not to, she's already told our parents and many family members about the situation, which makes me both upset and relieved, as I didn't have the courage to do it myself. My husband and sister have been sending me a lot of text messages, but I've been ignoring them. I'm really unsure about how to break this news to my kids. Update. One part of me was feeling sad and considering forgiving my husband for the sake of our kids, but the other part was filled with anger and wanted revenge. I explained to my children that things weren't going well at work, which was the reason for my sadness, and they believed it because I still couldn't bring myself to tell them about their father. I didn't mention this in the previous post, but my sister and her ex-husband, who was really attractive and a genuinely nice person, I'm sorry but it's the truth, got divorced because she had been mentally offending him throughout their entire relationship, and it had recently escalated to physical offense. That's when he had enough and decided to divorce her. Because of who she is, she fabricated a lie, claiming that her husband was the one being offensive and other untrue things. I got in touch with her ex-husband to have a conversation and asked if he wanted to seek revenge. He agreed, and we made arrangements to meet at a public cafe. During our talk, we discussed how offensive she had been and how he also suspected she had feelings for my husband. I shared what I had witnessed, and together we decided to begin our revenge plan. We began by reporting my sister to the police for the offense. At first, the officer was doubtful, but there was evidence, including a bruise she left on him and threatening texts she sent. The police said they would pursue the case and advised us to hire a lawyer before sending us home. Following that, I withdrew all the money from our joint account and moved it to my own. Since I owned the house, my plan was to evict him. I then hired a lawyer and initiated the divorce process. I knew it would be a tough and lengthy battle, but I was determined to do whatever it took to escape from this terrible man. A few days later, I sat my kids down and shared everything with them. My son was really angry, but my daughter didn't believe me at all. She accused me of lying, and I reassured her that even though she thought that, I wouldn't prevent her from seeing her dad. Later that same day, I arrived home from work to find my parents, my husband's parents, and my aunt all gathered together at her house. I had no idea this was happening. It turned out my aunt had reached her breaking point with my sister and decided to spill the beans to the whole family about what I had witnessed. She also revealed that my sister had been in and out of jail, and my aunt was the one who bailed her out each time. My parents were really angry and started shouting, expressing their disappointment in her. My mom even slapped her tightly and said they never wanted to see her again. Regarding my husband's parents, they expressed their disbelief, saying they never imagined he could stoop so low, especially considering his mom raised him as a single mom before meeting his stepdad, whom he referred to as his dad. Then, my daughter stood up and yelled at her dad, expressing her strong dislike for him and declaring that she never wanted to see him again. She ran upstairs to the room she shared with her brother at my aunt's house and slammed the door behind her. My son gave his dad a look of disappointment and then followed his sister upstairs. My husband knelt before me, begging for forgiveness. I gave him 2 days to pack his things and leave the house, warning that I'd call the cops if he didn't comply. He started sobbing, pleading that he had nowhere else to go. His parents had made it clear he wasn't welcome back there. I remained firm, expressing my desire for a divorce. Eventually, he agreed and left with teary eyes. 2 days later, I returned home with my kids. They hadn't been to school since our conversation and were finding it tough, especially my daughter. I sat them down and held them in my arms, assuring them that we were strong and would overcome this challenge together, no matter what. I promised to always be there for them. They both broke down in tears, and we stayed like that until they fell asleep. Later, I woke them up and took them to their beds, then went downstairs and had a breakdown of my own. I knew I couldn't let my kids see how much this was affecting me. I had to stay strong for them. I heard the doorbell ring, thinking it was my ex-husband, but it turned out to be my sister's ex-husband who came to visit. He comforted me with a hug as I cried, expressing how overwhelmed I felt about handling everything on my own. He stayed the night, and when I woke up, he had made breakfast for me and my kids, and they seemed to enjoy his company. He asked if they wanted to go somewhere special, and they were unsure, but he convinced them, and they eventually agreed, hurrying off to get ready. I thanked him warmly and hugged him back, expressing my gratitude. For clarity, my sister's ex has always been close with my kids. After they left, I called my lawyer and had a conversation before meeting with them. When I returned home, what I saw almost made me cry. I noticed that Thomas had ordered their favorite takeout and was sitting on the sofa, eating it, while my daughter snuggled up next to him, with red eyes from crying. Quietly, I took off my shoes and jacket and entered the living room, wearing a big smile on my face. My son rushed to me, giving me a big hug, and then we all sat down together to enjoy the night. Afterwards, I had a conversation with my kids, and we agreed to start seeing a therapist. Thomas was supportive and encouraged them to give it a try since he was already seeing one himself. My husband has been bombarding my phone with texts and calls, but I decided to block him. That's the latest update. If anything changes, I'll let you all know. Since then, my kids haven't spoken to their dad, and I also cut off contact with my parents. I also got tested for STDs and the results came back negative. Update. My daughter is doing her best, and by that I mean there are times when she comes to either me or Thomas crying about how much she hates her dad. On other occasions, she goes to her dad seeking comfort. I don't hold it against her, and I never will. It's heartbreaking to see her suffer so much. All she wants is for our family to be together again, but I know it's not possible because the damage has already been done. Sometimes she has episodes where she becomes emotionally overwhelmed and seems disconnected from what's happening around her. Occasionally, she slips up and calls Thomas dad, which isn't a bad thing. But I could never date my sister's ex, no matter how terrible she may be. It's just something I can't do. Regarding my son, he has been emotionally closed off. I sometimes find him crying alone at night, and I go to comfort him with a hug. We talk, and I stay with him until he falls asleep. This is the only way I can truly understand how he feels because he rarely communicates with me, no matter how much I try. As for my ex, he completely ended things with my sister and hasn't spoken to her since. He found a well-paying job after getting fired from his dad's company, and he now lives in a nice house. It turns out he had been saving money just in case I found out about his affair with my sister. My daughter informs me about all of this, but I never pressure her. She wants me to know what's happening in his life. My son doesn't talk to his father and doesn't visit him, and I won't force him to. My ex has been trying to contact me and sends flowers and gifts. I accept them because I don't want to waste things. Despite everything, I still love him. And it's not easy to let go of those feelings. Based on what I've heard, my sister is living in her car and working at a very low-paying job. I want to clarify that if she becomes homeless, I'll help her because I can't bear to see her on the streets, especially knowing how dangerous our town can be at night. Thomas has been a tremendous support for all of us, and he's just wonderful in every way. One more thing about Thomas is that he discovered he is bi and started dating a guy named Logan not too long ago. Logan has also been a great help, and my kids adore both of them. While my son fully loves them, my daughter is growing closer to them every day. I met this guy, and we've been talking and working out together a lot. He ignites the same spark in me that my ex used to when we were dating. I'm not saying I'll start dating him, but he brings me a lot of happiness. I haven't told my kids about him yet. That's all for now, and I'll keep you updated if anything else happens. Thank you all so much for the love and support. It means the world to me, and I love you all so much. Hey everyone, I posted an update not too long ago, and 2 things that received a lot of attention were 1. Me accepting gifts from my ex, and 2. Helping my sister in the future. Let me address the first one. I don't throw away the gifts from him because I don't like wasting things that are perfectly fine. Thomas came up with a good idea, suggesting that I could donate the gifts to a women's shelter or orphanage. He usually gives me flowers, teddy bears, or jewelry, which I won't use, so I'll be giving them away to others who might appreciate them. Regarding helping my sister, I don't mean inviting her to live in my house. Instead, I'm considering giving her financial assistance. In my country, it's really dangerous for women to be alone at night. I'll only help her if my parents don't step in. I know what she did was wrong, but I can't just stand by and watch her face harm or danger. Edit. Don't worry, I would never let that awful person close to my kids, especially not Thomas. She ruined her life. And the only thing I'll make sure of is that she keeps her car and nothing else. No contact with us. I wouldn't cause the people around me more trauma than they already have. Regarding my ex, we have no future together, and I'm determined to make sure he understands that. Someone mentioned that my daughter might be saying things to her dad, and I hope she is. I want him to know how much better we're doing without him. As for the money he saved up, I don't want it. I have a well-paying job, and my kids always get what they need when they need it. So, we don't need his help or his tainted money. That was everything for now. Have a wonderful day, you guys. And again, thank you for the support. You have no idea how much you've helped me. I grew up with a single mom because my dad passed away when I was only 2 years old. Throughout most of my life, I focused on my career, and my mom supported me in that pursuit. However, at the age of 20, I met my ex-girlfriend, and we started dating. We were initially colleagues, but she mentioned that she would soon work in a different sector. Later on, she met another guy at her new workplace and claimed to be in love with him while still being in a relationship with me. I only found out about her infidelity when she admitted to having closeness with him after a girls' night out with her friends. I immediately broke up with her and asked her to leave. A few hours later, while trying to process what happened, my mom called me and started shouting, saying that she hadn't raised me to act like this. I was confused and asked her what she meant. She told me that my ex-girlfriend had accused me of cheating on her and claimed to have proof of it on my phone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried talking to my mother, explaining that the opposite is true, and she was the one who cheated on me, but she didn't believe me. Part of the reason might be that she and my ex-girlfriend genuinely loved each other. I never had an issue with their relationship before. I actually liked how well they got along. However, my mother called me a liar and threatened to disinherit me from her will, not wanting a cheater as a son. She said she never wanted to see me again. Later, my grandparents called me, expressing their disappointment in me and suggesting that I deserve any bad things that may come my way. You know what made it even worse? I discovered that my cheating ex-girlfriend continued to meet with my mom after everything she had done. All of this was incredibly painful for me. The only person who stood by my side was my best friend, and he was really angry with my ex-girlfriend. I talked to him, and he hugged me while I cried in his arms. I know some people might find it unusual for two guys, but his support helped me tremendously in getting through this tough time. 1 year later, when I thought I had moved on, the doorbell rang, and I opened it to find my mom with tears in her eyes. My emotions came rushing back, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I slammed the door shut and angrily asked her what the heck she wanted here. She said she wanted to talk to me and that she was so sorry. After she begged for 15 minutes straight, I finally gave in and opened the door again. She told me that my ex had admitted to cheating when she was drunk. My mom apologized sincerely, realizing that she had failed as a mother by not believing her own child. I told her that I accept her apology, but I don't want to see her right now, and I may never be able to forgive her, even though she begged me to. In the past few months, she has been calling me daily, claiming she just wants to hear my voice. She says she misses me, apologizes again, and asks if I could come over. Her voice always sounds pained, and she constantly expresses her love for me. She knows I might hate her, but she can't bear the thought of that. To be honest, I don't hate her. She's still my mom, but our trust is shattered. I can never fully trust her again because what if I enter another relationship? What if she believes someone else over me again? I appreciate her efforts, but I can't forgive her or even see her right now. I hope she understands that I need time to heal and process everything. Update. After reading many comments yesterday, I decided to meet with my mom today to clear things up. I texted her and she didn't hesitate. She showed up at my door within 15 minutes. Many of you made good points about what I should ask her. Although she called me several times, we rarely had a proper conversation. So when she came over, I sat her down in the living room. There, I asked about my grandparents, her will, and if she's still in contact with my ex. She explained that she had informed my grandparents, and she expected them to call me, but it seems they were too stubborn to do so. She also assured me that I am still in her will. Then she started talking negatively about my ex, claiming that when she found out about the affair, she punched her so hard that my ex lost a few teeth. I find it hard to believe that particular detail, but I thought it was amusing to hear nonetheless. She said she told my ex to duck off and kicked her out of the house. She began apologizing again and expressed that she knows how badly she messed up. She understands that I may never trust her again, but she's determined to do everything she can to make things right. She revealed that her past experiences with infidelity made this a sensitive topic for her, and admitted that she regrets not believing me or listening to my side of the story. I stayed quiet as she explained all of this. Then, I asked her how I could be sure I could trust her now. I questioned what would happen if I faced a similar situation and if she would just abandon me again. She assured me that I have her word, but I replied that her word doesn't mean much because I don't trust her in the first place. She didn't respond adequately to my answer and continued pleading for my forgiveness. I told her that, for now, I can't forgive her, and I might never be able to, but I do see her efforts. If she wants me back in her life, she needs to demonstrate that I can rely on her. She started to tear up, trying to hold back her tears the whole time, but eventually, she couldn't hold it in and broke down crying. In a whimpering voice, she asked if she could at least give me a hug. I agreed to that, and she promised to make things right, no matter what it takes, before she left. While I'm somewhat touched by how much she regrets her actions, I'm really worried about my own reaction to all of this. When she broke down and I saw my own mother crying on the floor, I didn't feel anything. I wasn't sad, angry, or happy, and I couldn't show any empathy for her. It was just too difficult for me. Throughout the year of having no contact with her, I had refused to go to therapy, but maybe it's not too late to consider it now. Update. Hey everyone! Some of you may have been waiting for an update since my last one was 4 months ago, so I've been going to therapy, and I feel much better now. However, that doesn't mean I've forgotten what happened. I have to admit my mom has really improved herself. Last month, when I moved into a new apartment, she immediately agreed to help, even canceling important work appointments to be there for me. She calls me almost every day to check on me, and even brings me lunch at my workplace. She visits me at home just to see me and says she wants to hear my voice. Despite her efforts, I still can't fully trust her, and I'm unsure if I ever will. But I do acknowledge her attempts to make amends. She also spoke to my grandparents, and they apologized, but I don't really care about them. They were still unpleasant even after the truth came out. Some of you might be curious about my ex. The last I heard, she was cheated on by the guy she cheated on me with. He saw her as just a fling. It's just hearsay from my best friend's friends, and honestly, I don't care about her at all. Though, if it's true, it would be some great karma. Today was a significant day for me, and I hope I made the right decision. My mom has been visiting me almost every day after work, sharing about her day and asking about mine. She's always concerned about how I'm feeling and if she can help with anything. Today we had a genuinely good time. We watched a movie, she cooked for me, and it was an overall wonderful day. I can't deny it. Every day when she left, she hugged me goodbye, but I never hugged her back. I was still cautious. However, today, when she hugged me, I finally hugged her back and told her that I forgive her. My heart was pounding hard and fast when those words came out. It took a lot of strength for me to say this because I had no idea how she'd react. Just a few months ago, I couldn't have imagined saying those words. At first, she looked surprised, but within seconds, she broke down in tears and hugged me, thanking me repeatedly. I felt a bit lost and didn't know how to respond. She kept expressing her love for me and how proud she is to have me as her son. She acknowledged her terrible mistake in doubting me and feeling awful for ever thinking I could cheat. She assured me that she'll always be there for me and promised to call me tomorrow. I'm not exaggerating when I say the whole moment felt like a scene from a drama movie, but I'm okay with it. Yes, she made a terrible mistake, but I can't hold on to this unforgiveness forever, especially after witnessing all the efforts she's put into repairing our relationship. This might not be the update some of you wanted to read, but I feel good about it.